Well, welcome everybody. We want to just appreciate you all for joining us this evening. We welcome you to the Capistrano School Counselor presentation of stress management. So thank you this evening. You're here with the full spectrum of counselors from elementary, middle school to high school. This webinar, as you see presented on this title screen for parents and guardians, the information we'll be reviewing and addressing this evening will be very similar to information you may be aware of, and we also hope to highlight new information, helpful information that can not only help you to support your student, your child, but maybe also the conversation that you might have with your students' school counselor at that elementary, middle, or high school level. So once again, thank you everybody. We just welcome you as we begin tonight's stress management webinar presentation. And I just want to initiate some reminders for everyone. In English, translate over to Spanish, but there is a Spanish interpretation available for this webinar. If you select Spanish under the language interpretation on your screen, la interpretación en español está disponible también para este seleccionado, o si usted selecciona español en interpretación de idiomas que usted puede encontrar ahí en su pantalla. So please utilize the question and answer section below to ask your questions throughout the presentation. We will answer these questions at the end of the presentation. You may get a direct message throughout the presentation, but we definitely have a question and answer section at the end of our presentation this evening. This webinar recording and copy of the presentation slides will be available for you as we close as well. So should you, for whatever reason, need to step away but want to come back to the information, we will make it available to you. And we will also be giving away 3 Starbucks gift cards to 3 lucky attendees that are here with us this evening. We just appreciate everyone for being here, and we're able to give away 3 gift cards, which we're also excited to do. So we just want to introduce ourselves. My name is Omero Corral. I am a middle school counselor for Las Flores Middle School.
Hello, good evening, parents and guardians. Thank you so much for being here tonight. My name is Melissa Moore. I'm the school counselor at Arroyo Vista K-8 school.
Hello, thanks for joining us. My name is Kristen Viscano, and I'm the school counselor at Chaparral and Harris Creek Elementary Schools.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us. My name is Jamie Runyon. I am one of the school counselors at Tesoro High School.
Good evening. My name is Tiffany Lee, and I am one of the other school counselors at Tesoro High School.
Hi, good evening. My name is Susan Burke, and I am a school counselor at Ladera Ranch Elementary and Middle School.
Well, thank you once again, everybody, for joining us as we continue our presentation this evening. I want to go ahead and just highlight some objectives that we have that we just want to make sure we walk away with this evening. Once again, some of this information may be known to you. We want to highlight that and then provide additional information to support you as you support your student, be it at home or be it in connecting with your counselor. So after completing this webinar, you should know and understand what stress is, understand the most substantial stressors for CUSD students. We'll be sharing some information that we have directly known about our students, recognize signs and symptoms of stress, identify coping strategies to manage that stress, and walk away recognizing when a child needs additional support. And we have a special guest to support us in the ways that we'll be speaking on this evening. So let's begin just with a general overview. I know we all have our understandings of stress, but for today's presentation, we just want to highlight that stress, it's a common feeling that every person experiences. Some of you watching this, probably nodding your head and saying yes, especially as of late. We experience it at times, and it results from a demand on the brain, the body, and it can be beneficial. But an overabundance of this stress can also be harmful to your overall health, overall on your daily functioning, day in and day out. So I want to talk a little bit about good stress, or what's known as eustress. And so these are low levels of stress, and they can be beneficial, as we mentioned before. They strengthen the connection between neurons and the brain. So within brain functioning, it can be beneficial in that way, in the production of extra interleukins also. In developing a physical and physiological sense of control to better manage future stressful situations. So as we reflect on the times that we were stressed, sometimes we carry what it is that we remember, or how that stress in that moment has helped us later on in the future. And it's also helpful in pushing you to change, to grow, overcome, and adapt. For example, helping to get a job or get work done. And this may be the different areas in which you may have potentially talked to your student about how stress is sometimes good for you, helpful, or supportive. Bringing it full spectrum, obviously there's the good, but then you can also find yourself in distress, or this can be identified as bad stress. And this is persistent with extreme levels of stress. So if you're inundated, it's consistent, persistent, that's where you may find yourself, your student might find themselves in distress. So distress can lead to physical symptoms. Some symptoms we'll be highlighting this evening, symptoms you may have noticed within your student. And it also can lead to medical conditions. It accounts for 75 to doctor visits. If chronic or untreated, accounts for more than 50% of lifetime prevalence of an emotional disorder. So when it continues, it's not supported, it's not found a way to alleviate, continues to do so, we can see these percentages on the increase of stress. And the OSHA has declared a stress hazard of the workplace. And in the workplace, which many of us this evening are experiencing for ourselves, in the workplace, it has cost more than $300 billion support needed to address distress, bad stress on an annual basis, which is definitely a lot of money.
All right, so now that we know that there are different types of stress, good stress and bad stress, it's helpful for us to all understand what are some of those common causes of stress, especially for our children and our adolescents. So first, taking a look at childhood stress, oftentimes it can relate to any changes or instability within the family structure. So whether there may be family turmoil or concerns about money or jobs, as well as maybe some separation in the family or any loss or death. Obviously, this can all be very overwhelming for our children to navigate, and oftentimes they may feel powerless or just not having a sense of control and wanting to help their family in these times. Also, we see overly packed schedules, whether that is filled with different activities or just a variety of different responsibilities that our children might have. That can be overwhelming for them when they're not used to having those types of schedules, as well as changes in schedules due to COVID. So I know that we've been in this period of COVID for about a year now, and so some of our children are still missing what their schedules used to look like, being able to play with their friends, being able to be at school in a different way. So that could cause stress for our children. Bullying and friendship concerns also play a large role in our children's lives. Bullying might be obvious or it could be quite subtle, but when they're experiencing this, sometimes they feel nervous to share that they are being bullied, since it can be considered as a weakness. So they might have stress related to that. As well, we have current events in our news and community. As much as we try to shield our children from these current events, they are getting exposed to what's happening in the world, and oftentimes they feel a sense of fear, maybe not fully understanding the scope of what's happening, but still a sense of fear from what they see around them. And lastly, any scary books and movies can bring also a sense of fear and stress when they can't figure out what is fiction and what is reality. And looking at adolescent stress, there are a lot of similarities. We see some similarities with overly packed schedules, as well as current events in the news and community, but we're starting to see more pressure related to academics. Our teens are having to juggle multiple classes, and with that comes multiple or many different expectations from different teachers as well as parents that can all weigh heavily on our teens. They also experience pressure and expectations from their peers, wanting to fit in, also wanting to be popular. That can add a lot of stress onto how they navigate their time at school and outside of school. Like I mentioned, overly packed schedules, we have students that are getting involved in so many different activities and really extending themselves quite far, spreading themselves very thin, which can be concerning. And with current events in the news, oftentimes our youth or our teens are wanting to be a part of the positive change and really take on added responsibility of how to fix the world. So that can be stressful for them. Social media plays a large role in our teens' lives, this constant state of comparison. And then lastly, planning for the future. So college career steps can be quite daunting for them to think about and can be quite stressful. So we did do a needs assessment for our Capistrano Unified School District to see what were some of the main stressors for our students. So taking a look at our elementary school students, we found that coronavirus was actually the largest or the biggest, most common stressor across all grades from TK through 5, followed by getting along with family members and changes in the family. So those were the top 3 stressors for elementary school students. For our middle school students, we see a little bit of a different trend. So I know this graph can seem like a lot, but we want to focus on the blue and the yellow bars, which represent agree and strongly agree. And we see that academic pressure and workload is actually the most or the highest stressor for our middle school students. And then that's followed by teacher expectations and parent expectations. So we do see a different trend in middle school, but when we move to high school, we see a similar trend. So academic pressure and workload is again the top stressor for our high school students. And then it's followed by uncertainty about my future and college admissions, which makes sense because right now college seems quite uncertain. What is the expectation of getting into college? And also, what does my future look like? What are the possible jobs that I can pursue at this time? It's all looking quite uncertain for our high school students. So at this time, we do want to give a poll to see what are your current stressors. So if you can take a moment to complete our poll that's on the screen, what are your current stressors? We have basic needs, changes in family, childcare, coronavirus, grief/loss of a family member or friend, loss of a job, supporting your children with online learning, and other. So I'll give you about a minute to complete that. All right, we almost have everybody. So I'll give you a few more seconds and then we will show the results. All right, well, we have 80% that have voted. And coronavirus is actually the highest stress or the most common stressor for our audience today. This is helpful for us to know, to understand what's on your mind and what's been stressing you. And that's followed by supporting your children with online learning. And then it seems like the rest are a bit equal. All right, and then we do have this quote that we wanted to share. Mental pain is less dramatic than physical pain, but it is more common and more hard to bear. So although it can be more obvious to see when our children are in physical pain, we know that mental pain, while invisible, can be just as debilitating and can also be just more common across, our youth as well as our peers.
All right. Hello, everyone. Once again. So I am going to be following with you all as we continue this conversation this evening with signs and symptoms of stress. And right now, we want to ourselves to your students. And this is going to be a portion where some of these things you may be nodding your head in agreement and saying that that's what I see. And again, great conversations to share with your school counselor and how we can support your student academically when they're on campus, and some of the things may be new, so we hope to be able to provide you with so much information to take, and again, maybe have those conversations with your school counselor. So as we highlight and overview these signs and symptoms, speaking in a general sense, and then this star portion may make it a little bit easier or more helpful to see on where certain signs or symptoms, be it physical, emotional, or in relation to their behaviors, that you might see more elemental. So if you do see a pink star, that means that sign or symptom is a little bit more common, or we do see it, elementary counselors do see it more at their level. A blue star would indicate that sign or symptom is more reflective at the middle school level, and the yellow star you might see where the sign or symptom is more so related to the high school level. So just to give an overview of some signs, symptoms related to physical associations with stress. So bedwetting, and as you can see there, I the star. Not to say that it might not happen for your middle school, high school student, but that is something that you might see with your student, and maybe a sign of stress that's going on. Physical health complaints, some of the more common ones might be stomach aches, headaches, but should you see any physical health complaints, maybe it's something to ponder, consider that it may be in relation to stress itself. The sleep patterns, are they poor sleep patterns with little to no sleep? Is it infrequent? Do they have days where they're not sleeping? Are there other days when they're sleeping in excess or a lot more? And I know with the hybrid model, sometimes that may affect sleeping patterns as well. But something to be mindful of is your student's sleeping pattern, especially for our younger students. Sometimes they can't necessarily articulate certain things, but you yourself, in monitoring them and keeping a close eye, it may be something that you might notice. Changes within appetite, as well. This is something you want to be mindful of. Excessive eating, a lot more, or even not eating as much or not being as hungry. Some of these things may find themselves in that normative range of adolescence, or they're growing in themselves. But then you want to be mindful of it overall as a pattern. Do you see a drastic change in their eating? Do you feel that it's something within their normal growth patterns, or might it be related to stress? Just something to consider. Sleep problems or nightmares, that may be in relation to their sleep patterns as well. But those nightmares, problems going to sleep, and you just want to maybe inquire, talk to your student a little more. Is there's chronic worry? I know this might be a more well understood point. When we see our students worrying or crying, we may identify that with stress. So this one's probably well known. Nail biting, you may sometimes might just want to take a look at their hands and see if you don't see them overtly chomping on their fingernails and whatnot, but nail biting itself may be a sign of stress that they are enduring. Grinding teeth, clenching their jaw, And down at the bottom, identified with the blue and yellow star, that we, see it at middle and high school. But once again, not to say that you might not see it at the elementary level, but self-harm. And that itself it's on a full spectrum. It could be from, cutting, superficial cuts. It can be from more severe attempts to harm oneself. These are all indicators, physical signs and symptoms that your student may be dealing with stress. Emotional signs. So specifically, this is where you might hear your student expressing to you, or you being more noticeable, that they are anxious, having excess anxiety, worry, or unease. I'll just bring you back mentally to the beginning, where we said there's a normative level of having anxiety or worry about a test or an assignment. But if you see this to be a little bit more chronic, excessive, not ceasing, that is when we spoke about distress, where it might be something maybe you want to inquire a little bit more from the school counselor if they're seeing it as well. But feelings of anxiety, worry, and stress are definitely emotional signs of stress. Changes in mood or mood swings. So these valleys where the mood is really low, or they are in a depressed state, or these high moods of excess excitement, and these high escalated moods of anger or frustration within itself as well. Just being mindful of their moods. Once again, there's that normative range. You may have a teenager at home or a preteen, and there's some just normative changes to the mood that comes along with that. But if you do feel that it's a little bit outside of the norm, or you wanted to maybe inquire if these emotional mood swings or changes are happening at school, again, a great conversation to potentially inquire with your school counselor. And that may lead itself towards moodiness, aggression, a short temper, or clinginess, something that we definitely see at the elementary and middle school levels. Sometimes it's things that the kiddos are working through, but other times it may be related to stress and something you want to keep your eye on. Fears. So fears of the dark, being alone, excessive fear of strangers. We see this at the elementary level as well. And some of it, again, is just normative behavior. But if you do see it excessive, persistent, and you don't really see an end, and you see it so much, that's something you may want to be mindful of in reaching to better support your student. And expressions, or if you see your child with sadness, in a depressed state, or frequently crying as well. There's all kinds of things that may make us cry or make us sad, which are completely understandable. But once again, it is when you see this in excess, persistent and consistent, you may potentially want to connect with some more individuals to better support your student. And as I get ready to close this portion, specific behavioral signs. So those things may be nervous habits. You may, within this time, this new form of learning, as we're navigating through the present pandemic, new nervous habits that your student may have outside of the biting nails. It could be them pacing. It could be them stammering. But maybe if you are just mindful of some new nervous habits, is it associated with school? Or maybe there be a little bit more in their stress levels where you may want to get support. Changes to their appetite. We saw this before, but once again, it's something that you want to be mindful of. If they are checking out from responsibilities with relation to academics, it might be homework and assignments. But once again, some of the stress, it just may be bleeding into their daily functioning, their daily routine, their daily schedules. If you see them just checking out, just not even engaging with their responsibilities at home, this may be something you want to be mindful of. Physical aggression, irritability outside of the norm, whether it's verbal aggression with siblings, physical aggression with siblings, and excess, persistent, consistent, potentially difficulty concentrating. Our students within the hybrid model are, engaged online, on a computer, on a laptop and whatnot. And it's understandable that they may have certain difficulties concentrating. But once again, if you do see this in excess, getting into trouble at school, if you do see this within their behaviors, if you see this have picked up within the present times, it may be because the present situation does have them a little bit stressed out, or maybe one of the items that was mentioned with Tiffany in the last segment, hoarding items of seeming insignificance. For whatever reason, they have a large amount of the school carrots, or a large amount of pencils and things that seem insignificant that are new. And it started there, that we definitely see this at the elementary and middle school level. Refusal to go to school or frequent absences. You may potentially are communicating with administration at local schools because your student is struggling to attend school, if they have a couple of days where they are attending, if not more than that, or if they have frequent absences, and if they themselves are isolating or withdrawing. You might see this with their friends, where they isolate or they withdraw away from their friends. But maybe if you wanted to take a look at home as well, do they isolate or withdraw from family functioning? Do they not want to eat at the dinner table anymore? Do they not want to socialize and watch a movie or play a board game or whatever it might be? These all may be signs that your student is struggling with their stress levels. The academic decline, which may be something that's a little bit easier to note just because we have our online platforms and Monday through Friday they are engaging with school activities. And start there at the middle and high school level. Substance use, if this is something that you see growing with your student, items that you might find on their person, things that they're carrying, substance use also can be an indicator that your student is struggling with stress.
So to piggyback off of what Omero said about the physical, emotional, and behavioral symptoms of stress, we're moving on to parents and caregivers. So that's all of you right now. Hopefully you're doing great, and this picture may not represent how you're feeling right now. A little bit stressed, a little bit overwhelmed. Some of the physical, emotional, and behavioral signs and symptoms that are presented with stress for parents and caregivers are for physical signs and symptoms: headaches, digestive problems. You might be feeling frequent or prolonged colds, racing heart, chest pain, or dizziness. For emotional signs and symptoms and self-doubt, anxiety or uncertainty about things, constant worry, irritability, or feeling agitated, isolated, or overwhelmed at times, racing thoughts, memory problems, or having difficulty concentrating on certain functions. For behavioral signs and symptoms, changes in eating habits. Maybe you're eating more or eating less or not eating at all. You have sleep disturbance in which you're having trouble falling asleep, staying asleep. You're not interacting with others as much. That social interaction that you used to have may not be there. You procrastinate on things that you know you need to get done. You just wait it out and keep waiting, which can cause more anxiety. And at times you might lash out at others or yell. So here's the light at the end of the tunnel. What are some coping strategies? So tips for students academically. So I know Tiffany Omero have been talking so much about communication. Communication is key. How to help your student with academic stressors. Talk to them. Help them develop their executive functioning skills, the organization, the time management. Sit down with them and talk to them. Look at their calendar, whether it be in Canvas or on their phone or a physical calendar, which I still use. I know it's kind of old school, but I really do feel that the mind and the hand kind of writing things out does help. Keeping track of assignments, tests, and deadlines, and planning ahead is super important. Encouraging students to use a planner, because I feel like even as adults, we need this in our everyday lives to stay organized. And reminding your student to keep communication with teachers, especially in those middle and high school level courses. So they're in the know of how students are feeling, how students are doing. If they have a question on something, stay in communication with those teachers. Highlight your child's strengths. Keep on that positive, that growth mindset for everything that they're doing. Helping your child understand that by working hard and using effective strategies and asking for help when needed, they can succeed at anything that they do. And mistakes happen. So understanding that if you make a mistake, that we learn from it and grow from it. How to help your student at home. And I know a lot of our parents out there are having our students at home, whether it's some days, whether it's 100% online. You might be working from home right now, so there is a lot more time at home with your student. So encouraging and modeling those healthy habits. I've told parents time and time again that you are the #1 influence in their life. They watch you when you're on your phone or when you're talking at the dinner table or just at the supermarket when you're, your everyday interactions. So when you're at home, really modeling those healthy habits, encouraging conversation, helping your students set boundaries and practice that self-care. If they need to kind of take a break from their schoolwork, or if they need a snack, or if they just need to kind of relax for the evening, and knowing reasonable expectations. Focusing on your student's successes again and helping him or her practice that gratitude, being thankful, and especially I think during these times right now, practicing gratitude goes such a long way, being thankful for all that we have. Reassuring your student that he or she is loved and supported and that you care about them each and every day and that you're with them, that you're their biggest cheerleader. Practice relaxation and deep breathing techniques. Help your student gain a new perspective and problem solve and develop a plan. And refer your student for outside counseling if there's other supports that are needed that your school counselor cannot provide. Okay, so here are some amazing relaxation resources. So we're going to click on the virtual calming room in which every school counselor has at our district. This happens to be mine. I'm at a Royal Vista K-8 school. And we've got a number of different things. And I've actually clicked on these with students, with parents, and even for myself if I need just a visual relaxation or some yoga or just some positive music or even live animal cameras to see the animals in the wild, just take a break. So feel free to peruse your school counselor's virtual relaxation room for a little calming, whether it's 5 minutes or longer. So one of the other resources here for relaxation we have is deep breathing. So calming resources right at the bottom there, we have the Calm app. So you could even get this on your phone, in fact, and it's phenomenal. So if you take a look here, if you take deep breaths every day, it makes a world of a difference. And we practice with our students deep breathing in our lessons, in classrooms, and in our Canvas lessons. So taking deep breaths and using the Calm app can affect your mental, physical, and overall well-being. And I think it has a lot of great aspects to it, which can help our overall mindfulness, health, and happiness. So just some resources for you there. And the other two you can click on with the presentation. So how to build a resilient family unit. This is so important. And I think it takes every individual person in your home, whether it's grandma, whether it's dog, whether it's cat, everyone's got to get involved, kids, parents, everyone, because everyone is a part of that unit and is just so essential to the growth and development of making it great. So setting realistic expectations. So basically what needs to happen within that unit in order for it to be successful. And again, having that open communication, which we've been talking about throughout. Modeling healthy coping strategies. There's going to be good days, there's going to be bad days. What does that look like, and how am I handling those bad days? And how are we showing our students, hey, it's okay to have a bad day, and here's how we handle it as a family together. And increase your support network, whether it's families and friends in the community. You might have an online support group or a church group or other people in the community that can really connect and help you and your family in different ways. Know yourself. When do you need to take a moment just to say, you know what, I've just got to put everything away for a second. Let's go take a walk, or let's, watch a movie together, or I need to just, take a long bath, or just whatever that relaxation is for you, kind of knowing when you need that time. Know your own stressors and apologize if we make mistakes, because again, your student is watching your every move. Again, good days, bad days, we're all human, we all make mistakes, and it's okay. And then they're learning from you that it's okay to make mistakes, and then again, how we learn from them and grow. Listen with an open mind and heart to your student and their needs. Set time to communicate, whether it's at the dinner table, afterwards, maybe it's before, maybe it's going for an evening walk with the dog, kind of talking as a family together, and being patient and calm, and coming up with a plan and revisit it, because the plan that might work today may need to change over the summertime or next year, depending on the circumstances. So we've got some additional resources for you here. As we saw in the CUSD needs assessment, the coronavirus is the top stressor for students in elementary school. The Child Mind Institute provides some great resources, tips, and strategies for parents in addressing their child's concerns related to the coronavirus. This resource also provides tips for parents in managing self-care during the pandemic. And even during the poll, it seemed like the coronavirus was the #1 concern. So I think this would be a great resource for not only students, but parents and families as well. One of the other resources on this page is the Very Well family. The Very Well family offers some emotion-focused and problem-solving coping strategies for children. Emotion-focused strategies help provide children coping skills that they can use in situations that they cannot change, such as the coronavirus or a loss or divorce, and problem-focused coping strategies that help to empower children in situations that can be changed, like friendships and bullying. Another great resource found here is reachout.com. Reachout.com provides some positive coping strategies for teenagers. It also provides some tips on starting and having a positive conversation with your teen. And I know those teen years are so challenging, but don't give up. Continue to have those conversations, whether it's in the car, over ice cream, talking about different websites together that are effective. And again, keeping that communication open is key. So every school in CUSD has a school counselor. Utilize your school counselor to talk about the needs of your student. CUSD school counselors provide a comprehensive counseling program which supports the whole child. School counselors focus on the needs, interests, and issues related to social, emotional, academic, and college career development of all students through a multi-tiered system of supports. School counselors advocate, collaborate, and facilitate actions that promote a positive school environment, provide an opportunity for all students to access their education and achieve personal and academic success to meet the challenges of a rapidly changing world. The role of your school counselor is to advocate and support for all students' academic and personal success, and collaborate with parents, school staff, community stakeholders, and district counselors to promote a positive and inclusive climate. In addition, we use interventions to help support all students. Some of these interventions include core curriculum classroom lessons, or lessons that you've probably seen on Canvas for most of during the pandemic, small group counseling, short-term individual counseling, conflict mediations, and community referrals. This leads me into our very special guest tonight, community referrals, which Julia de Almeida, MSW, who is a social worker at the Children's In-Home Crisis and Stabilization Program, can talk to us more about how collaborating with outside community resources can be beneficial for our students and school community.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for the introduction. Hello, everyone, and I just wanted to go over these few talking points just regarding long-term mental health services care. Just a little background of my position. I work with children ages 5 to 18, and we work with our families to hopefully link them to long-term mental health services while simultaneously providing them with short-term mental health services. So why we're seeing this, and what I'm going to talk about in a little bit, is there is sometimes a delay in getting long-term mental health services. And so in order to offer families some additional support, we offer short-term and assist families with transitioning into long-term mental health services. So we do a lot of preparation with families to prep them for what long-term care might look like as far as mental health services. So what are some things to be mindful of when considering long-term treatment or long-term mental health services is that it does take some time. So I love all the measures that the presentation had regarding coronavirus, just because in the field, we have seen an increase of need for long-term mental health services throughout the pandemic. So we're noticing that some clinics and providers are having an influx of referrals. So it is taking a little bit longer than pre-pandemic to link children to a long-term therapist, psychiatrist, or psychologist. And one thing that's very important is that follow-up is key. So if you receive an information or a phone number, to call, leave messages, and continue to follow up. And that also brings me to the importance of trying out multiple providers at the same time, or calling multiple clinics, just because certain clinics might have longer wait lists, or certain providers might not have openings. And then also, when you do get an appointment, feel free to schedule some appointments with either different providers or different types of clinicians, because that therapeutic relationship that your child will develop with those providers is very important. So it's totally okay to let that provider know that you're trying out a few different people, and check in with your child and see, how was that session? How did that feel? Because maybe it wasn't correct on the first time, and maybe they want to try someone else, or they want to try someone who specializes in something a little bit different. So that brings me to, where should we begin to look for linking to mental health services? So one option is you can always consult with your child's primary care physician to see if they have the opportunity to submit a referral to any agencies that they might be working with or that they might refer to in the past. Additionally, for any families that have commercial insurance, you can always reach out to your provider, see what your coverage is, and then additionally move forward to receive a list of providers within your insurance network. Additionally, psychologytoday.com is a really great resource where you can find providers in your area. You can read reviews about them from their consumers, and you can read bios and things that they specialize in. So that's a really great resource to use. For any of our families that have Medi-Cal as their primary insurance provider, Orange County Gov has a specific tab for children, behavioral and mental health services, and they provide the list of all the county clinics and contract clinics within Orange County, and it is separated by region. So you would be able to find the one that is closest to your area or in a neighboring area as well. Additionally, through sources like Psychology Today, you can see if there are providers that offer services on a sliding scale, meaning that would be not going through insurance and paying out of pocket per appointment. So that could be an option too. Number 3, general overview of what long-term or formal therapy looks like. So this can kind of vary by the practitioner in which your family chooses to go through for long-term therapy. For an example, a therapist might be able to see a child one time per week, working on coping skills and sort of reinforcing skills to kind of help children deal with any sort of situational issue that they might be going through, any sort of life event that might have happened that could be impacting their overall mood. Just someone outside that could provide them with that additional support. A psychologist, again, is very similar to a therapist. However, they do conduct some tests that the therapist might not be able to. So we see psychologists, kind of like a school psychologist, would be able to assess for attention hyperactive disorder, also autism spectrum disorder, anything that could be related to neurological disorders or learning differences. A psychologist can assist with that. And then a psychiatrist is the only person in this umbrella of mental health that could prescribe medication. So for an example, that a lot of times is in collaboration with the two aforementioned therapist or psychologist. A lot of times the psychiatrist will come in and be an additional resource after the family's already tried out either with a psychologist or a therapist, or they might be able to present options to you as well to learn more of what treatment may look like. And so one thing that I wanted to note as well is formal therapy might come in, as I mentioned, with those situational issues, any sort of life events, or anything that might be happening at home, such as divorce or anything like that. Coronavirus is what we're seeing as well. If you're noticing some behaviors with your child are worsening and not improving, then that could be a reason why you might look for formal therapy as well and want that additional support outside as well. Additionally, we see a lot with grades dropping as well, where that would be something that they want additional assistance on as well. And then number 4, how can formal therapy positively impact students? So as they mentioned in the presentation, some really great coping skills. So with working in therapy with students and with children in particular, we really want to instill healthy habits. And how we can do that is working through coping skills and continuing to practice them on a regular basis so that when life happens, if they're presented with any challenges, they have a toolbox of things they can utilize to help them navigate through those types of situations. When I'm talking to families about long-term and formal therapy, I always compare it to our physical health. So sometimes a child might present as if everything's okay. We're not mind readers, so we can't tell what they might actually be going through. However, they might continue to see the therapist even though they might be presenting as okay or that everything's great, just to continue reinforcing those skills. So I compare it a lot of times to going to a doctor for an annual physical. So we go when we're healthy, we go to maintain our health, and a lot of times formal therapy can be used to continue providing that child with that support for their mental health and to continue to work through coping skills and coping strategies. So I hope that gave you guys a lot of insight, a little bit more about what some long-term or formal therapy might look like. It's great to collaborate with your child's provider to see what the treatment length might look like, because it does vary based on every child. Therapy is not one size fits all. And so it could be based on what the child is manifesting in progress and any sort of life events or anything that could be foreseeable as a struggle for the child in order to offer additional support. So I hope all that information was helpful for you all to give you kind of a brief overview inside of what long-term therapy looks like. And I thank you guys for allowing me to speak more.
Great work, Julia. Thank you so much. We really appreciate you being here tonight. Okay, now please take a moment to complete our online survey. If you click where it says click here in the presentation, you could find the survey. We'll just give folks a couple minutes. And it looks like in the chat, there's also a way to access the survey, as it looks like I think a couple of folks were having a little difficulties. If you look in the chat. It looks like it's also been posted there. So sorry about that. Okay, so we're going to move on to the Q&As next.
So one of the questions we had is, how do we recognize the anxiety signs from teenagers' behaviors? Most of them are common in both. And you're absolutely correct. It's difficult for all of us to tell if they're just being teenagers and having mood swings, or if there is something more going on. Like Omero said earlier, it's when it's consistent and it starts impacting their daily life. So they might refuse to go to school. It may start with just being a class because of something that happened in the class or a certain teacher, but then it gets more extreme. So it could be they used to hang out with their friends and now they're too nervous to meet them, or they don't want to call them for fear of rejection, but it ends up being more than that. So if anything that you see that's a big change in a student is something that you want to kind of investigate and see, because it could be depression, it could be anxiety. There's a lot of comorbid things that could be occurring. And so we would want to look at that. And any other questions, feel free to put them in the chat as well, or in the Q&A. And we will also be taking all of the emails from everyone who has been in attendance, and we will be sending out 3 of the Starbucks gift cards. So check your email this evening or tomorrow morning, and hopefully you're one of the winners. Thank you all for attending. If you have any additional questions, please, we'll stick around for a few minutes, but that is the end of our presentation. Thank you all so much.
Thanks, everybody. Have a great evening.